Bitcoin is the most secure and most decentralized coin. In terms of the next bull market, I think it might come soon. In terms of price, who knows? It's probably going to be quite a few times higher than the previous all-time high. It's all speculation.
Hey guys, welcome back to Altcoin Buzz Spotlight with me, Lee of Litecoin, the show where we speak to entrepreneurs, innovators, and thought leaders in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. We are very pleased today to be joined with Charlie Lee. He's a computer scientist and best known for being the creator of Litecoin. We're going to be talking MimbleWimble, privacy, scalability, and of course adoption, so make sure to stay tuned. Don't forget to let us know in the comment section below who you want us to interview next, which topics you want us to cover, and if you enjoyed the segment, then hit the like button. Charlie, great to have you on Altcoin Buzz. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Leah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Our audience are fans of Litecoin, so we're really pleased to have you on. It's been an interesting ride with Litecoin, a lot of news coming out recently, but I want to start with you. What have you been up to lately?
Well, since I left Coinbase in 2017, I've been focused on Litecoin. So I've been working with the Litecoin Foundation. I'm managing director, and yeah, basically just focus on Litecoin development and partnership and stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new developments with Litecoin, so we're definitely going to get into that. But it's been an interesting time with markets. We've seen, we've had the Bitcoin halving. Bitcoin doesn't seem to be moving too much, but the alts seem to be pumping. So I do want to get your thoughts. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the crypto market? And are we in a bull market, or do you think it's still quite bearish?
I wouldn't say we're in a bull market. I think we've been in a bear market since the end of 2017 or the beginning of 2018. I mean, this is kind of typical with crypto. We go through like bear and bull market every 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of like following the halving pretty closely. Like after the halving, we get a big, huge pump, and then after a while, you get a bear market for a few years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything does seem to just go in cycles. But people keep criticizing Bitcoin. But for me personally, I'm quite impressed that, we're seeing it staying around that 9K level during this crazy global pandemic we've seen. But I do want to focus on Bitcoin a little bit. So what are your thoughts? When do you think we could see some new all-time highs? And what kind of new all-time highs do you think we could expect?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, this bear market is actually not that bad compared to previous ones. Like the 9,000 is just a little bit less than half of the peak, right? Last time, I guess the last bull market before this, when Bitcoin went to over 1,000, it went back down to like 200, 300 for a while. So this one's actually not that bad compared to the previous one. In terms of the next bull market, I think it might come soon. I mean, it's always going to be surprising when it happens. In terms of price, who knows, right? It's probably going to be quite a few times higher than the previous all-time high. It's all speculation.
It is all speculation, but I definitely think that's a view I keep hearing. Some people I think have predicted October this year, but very, very interesting. Now, I kind of want to focus on adoption because that is a lot of what Litecoin are doing at the moment. So would you say that the cryptocurrency adoption has actually been slower than you expected when you initially got into all of this?
Well, when I initially got into it in 2011, it's really, people really didn't know where Bitcoin would go, right? In terms of price, it actually exceeded what I initially, like my kind of hopeful price prediction. I thought it would be, I think back then I said if it hit $5,000 in like 2030, that would be extremely crazy. I mean,
Wow.
that back then when Bitcoin the low was at $2, right? So going to 5,000 would be a huge increase. So it already passed 5,000 in 2017. So it already like exceeded my really bullish prediction. In terms of adoption, we still have a lot to go, right? I think what's cool is that pretty much everyone has actually heard of Bitcoin now. And that's a start, right? But not everyone's kind of in this space. I think it's going to take quite a few more years before we get like a lot of people in this space. But I think it will happen. It's kind of slowly and surely will happen.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. The average person now seems to have heard of Bitcoin, and I think that's such a big step in the right direction, whether or not they're even invested in it or not. But Litecoin, of course, you guys are focusing on adoption, so I want to now delve into that. So can you tell me, in terms of technology and adoption, what is going on with you guys?
Um, I think a lot of it is kind of just getting more merchants to accept it, more people to actually start using it. More awareness will help. Um, Technology wise, I think Litecoin and Bitcoin, they work very well today as money, right? I think one of the few things that's missing is just better fungibility and privacy, and that's something that I'm focused on adding to Litecoin soon.
Yeah, and speaking of that, MimbleWimble is very big news for you guys. So can you explain to me how this is going to be integrated into Litecoin and how you actually think it's going to bring about that that privacy, that fungibility, and scalability?
Yeah, so MimbleWimble has been around for a while. There's two of the major coins, Grin and Beam, that use MimbleWimble. What's cool about MimbleWimble is it gives you privacy without sacrificing scalability. So a lot of the privacy coins out there right now are not scalable at all. For example, like Zcash has huge transactions for doing private transactions, and Monero would keep around. To use Monero, you have to keep around all the UTXOs, all the transaction outputs. So the size of the Monero blockchain or the mempool just grows like nonstop. It never gets smaller. So it's really hard for that to scale. Um, with MimbleWimble, it does privacy, but it has cut through and allows you to kind of throw away inputs and outputs that's already been spent. So it really does privacy with scalability in mind, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I decided to work on adding MimbleWimble to Litecoin, is because I realized we still need to scale even with privacy.
Yeah, and I'm often hearing about when you try and implement privacy, other sort of important factors have to be compromised. So this really does this use case here makes a lot of sense. But Litecoin was supposed to be the silver to Bitcoin's gold. So where do you stand on this? Do you still think it stands true today?
To a certain degree, yeah. I mean, Litecoin, the idea of silver to Bitcoin's gold is just the idea that it's easier to use Litecoin, it's quicker, confirmations happen faster, fees are cheaper. I mean, that is all true still today, right? For like small transactions, like Bitcoin is the most secure and most decentralized coin. But for if you're buying like coffee, you don't really need the security and decentralization of Bitcoin. Litecoin is good enough. So one confirmation Litecoin is 2.5 minutes versus like 10 minutes in Bitcoin, and that's good enough for most day-to-day transactions. And that's kind of the idea of Litecoin, is you can just easily use it. It's fast and cheap and secure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate over Bitcoin's use case, whether when mass adoption comes, it will be that, whether it'll be just simply a store of value or that day to day, digital currency to use to actually transact in. And I think, what you just said there is sort of the common consensus. But with Bitcoin and Litecoin aside, what other cryptos are you particularly interested in at the moment? For example, today when we're recording this, Link seems to have pumped quite a bit. There's a lot of talk around Cardano's ADA. So any altcoins have taken your interest?
Um, I tend to like coins that are more decentralized. Um, One other coin I like quite a bit is Monero. I think, uh, although it doesn't scale as well as Bitcoin and Litecoin, I think what Monero does correctly is it does kind of full privacy. It's not opt-in. It's every transaction is private. I think for a pure like privacy coin, you need that. That's something that Zcash doesn't have, which is just full privacy. And yeah, Monero would be a coin that one of the coins I like, and it's very decentralized. Right, like
So
the
then,
coins you mentioned, like Link and Cardano, um, they're not very decentralized, right? There's a kind of a entity that created it that owns a lot of the coins, and it has pretty much full control over that blockchain.
Yeah, it's interesting because as we move forward with this space, we sort of see that push and pull between centralization and decentralization, which always fascinates me because decentralization is sort of why we're all here in the first place. So yeah, it is an interesting one. But with all of that in mind, then I want to get your thoughts on proof of stake.
Um, yeah, so, well, let me speak a bit about decentralization, right? So, I mean, the main reason why you use a blockchain is because of decentralization. If you don't really need decentralization, then the blockchain is just a very kind of expensive
Mm.
database, right? So if you have a coin that's not decentralized and it's using a blockchain, you have to question like why, right? If you they could easily have just used a centralized database and it would just be more efficient and cheaper and everything will still work because in the end you rely on that entity anyways. Um, so moving on to proof of stake, I'm not fully kind of bought in on proof of stake. Proof of stake has been around for many years, right? Decades. Has never really worked well because there's always um, issues with um, like nothing at stake problem. There's issue with basically the rich getting richer, and it's not as fair as proof of work. I think proof of work is still like the best form of consensus algorithm for money, for decentralized global money. Proof of stake could work, but I haven't seen it work well yet.
That's pretty interesting. And of course, there's Ethereum 2.0 coming out, so that'll be interesting just to see how everything plays out. But I want to just move on and focus more on DeFi because DeFi is huge right now. People have even said, it's the year 2020 is the year of DeFi. So tell me your thoughts on DeFi, decentralized exchanges, lending, borrowing, and all financial tools which can potentially be built.
I'm also not super excited about DeFi.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
there is, I mean, there's going to be a lot of problems with DeFi where um, if you're truly decentralized, then anything like any bugs in the system you can't undo,
Mm.
right? So if you're putting a lot of money on the line, people are used to having an undo button, right? If even with centralized finance, if something happened to your bank, you have the kind of insurance on the money in the bank. There's always stuff, or stock market can reverse transactions if something really bad happens. But with DeFi, you can't do that, and we've seen a lot of so-called hacks, which are just people kind of uh, taking advantage of a bug in the system, in the smart contracts, or a loophole to kind of steal all the funds from that smart contract, like millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars. And that happens, and there's nothing you can do about it because if it's truly decentralized, then you can't undo that. And if it's not truly decentralized and they have backdoors that let the issuer take the money back, then what's the point, right? If there's a backdoor, then what's the point of DeFi in the first place? So I find it to be kind of a solution that is kind of impossible to solve, right? It's either centralized and safe or decentralized and not safe, because in the end, in a decentralized finance system where there's millions of smart contracts interacting with each other, there's going to be the surface area of bugs is going to be so large that it's impossible to create something that is uh, perfect, right? So there's going to be lots of money being stolen, and I think it's just that'll never end. So not too excited about. I'm not too optimistic about the future of DeFi.
That's really interesting, just because I keep hearing a lot of excitement over it. So it's actually a pleasure just to sort of hear a different perspective. Just finally, I do want to end on a light note. I want to know, who is your favorite Dragon Ball character, Charlie?
My favorite Dragon Ball character, I mean, everyone's favorite Dragon Ball character is Goku, right? I mean, he's like the hero that never loses. Um, I also I also really like Vegeta, right? Vegeta is a more interesting character than Goku, and people like to compare, like, say Goku is like Bitcoin and Vegeta is Litecoin. Right? Litecoin is kind of always striving to be there, but it always loses out to the big brother of Bitcoin. Um, but yeah, I think Vegeta is pretty cool too.
Definitely some good choices. Charlie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's such a pleasure. And I want to wish you the best of luck with the rest of MimbleWimble. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Leia.